Thank you very much for presenting for me this poster. So I also want to talk a little bit about the inflammatory aspect in aniridia-associated keratopathy. We heard a little bit about this in this morning, and you also heard before we learned that there is less about this inflammatory information in the associated keratopathy in patients direct, or what is the cause or maybe also the consequence of this disease. And there is one study from tear fluid from aniridia patient to find the cytokines in these patients, and we try to focus on the inflammatory expression or the expression of inflammatory cytokines in samples of conjunctiva of aniridia patients. So the next thing is what we also focused in is if there is a difference in the AAK grading for mild or severe status of AAK. And for this we have a lot of patients, 20 patients with aniridia, and we get some samples, conjunctiva samples of these patients. I'm not aware if you know how it works. So we have a little stamp with a small filter paper in the front of, and from this stamps you can take some samples from the conjunctiva of the patients. And it's not very painful, it's only a short time, and a lot of cells can attach to this filter paper. And we compared these samples from aniridia patients to normal samples, so we have 20 patients and 20 normal subjects. And we isolated the RNA of these cells, and this RNA we observed with a microarray, and on this microarray we have the opportunity to detect about 15,000 different genes or expressions of mRNA. And in this study we focus on the inflammatory related cytokines. So these cytokines were about 30, which were deregulated expressed compared to the normal subjects. And we grade these samples in mild and severe forms of aniridia. So you can maybe see this here in this upper layer, that we have different expressions, so the red and the blue ones. The blue ones are the aniridia patients, the red ones are the control samples, and here is also the same, the controls and the aniridia patients, and the upper ones are downregulated mRNA expressions, and the lower ones are upregulated expression of different genes related to inflammation. So we graded them, the special cytokines, into mild and severe forms, and try to find out if there's a difference in the expression compared to controls. So in this side we have the downregulated, some of the downregulated genes, and in this side some of the upregulated genes. And you can see that there is a difference from the mild groups, but not really a difference in the severe groups compared to the controls in these selected genes. They are randomly selected genes to the controls. Sometimes it is, but in most cases the mild forms have more difference to the controls than the severe groups. So this is sometimes what we find kind of interest. So it seems like that during the progression of aniridia or the keratopathy, the expressions of the inflammatory cytokines normalized a little bit. So at least on this data on mRNA expression, so it would be also kind of interest to focus on the protein expression of these genes, not only on the mRNA expression. So what we conclude about this, so maybe it's in the early stage of keratopathy that the patients, when a little bit conjunctiva conjunctivitis is coming down to the cornea, the inflammation is upregulated in the patients, and after a while, when they're coming a little bit quiet in these kind of disease, that the expression of the inflammatory genes is reduced. So we will focus in the future also on the expression of proteins from this kind of patients. So, and we will hope that we can further on go with these experiments and support a little bit the research about the inflammatory in the RK grading. So, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. So you have a question there? A couple questions?
Thank you. I didn't manage to see in detail all the cytokines that you measure, but perhaps you could tell us if your data suggests a shift towards Th2 rather than Th1 rather than Th2 immunity from what you see.
The shift in RK grading, you mean?
I mean, like where more like cytokines like of the group of interleukin 4, 5, 10, which are more like type 2 immunity cytokines, like or more like type 1.
It's a little bit randomly selected. So what we find out is so we had a border. So we only focused on the expression of the genes which have the criteria of a twofold change to the controls or a significant level of lower than 0.05. So, and this was only 30 related genes, inflammatory related genes from this total microarray. Does this answer your questions? No?
Well, yes, I guess. Did in the end, among these genes, for instance, was there interleukin 1?
It was what?
Interleukin 1.
Interleukin 1 does not meet the criteria. No, it was not. Yeah, it was not. It was interleukin 1 beta. It was. I think it is in the list.
Yeah, I see it. Yes, interleukin 1 beta.
It should be in the
yes.
upregulated genes,
yeah.
Really low, but it was not that much upregulated with a fold change. It was really low expressed, but at least this is only on the mRNA level. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
So that's very nice. A quick question. For your statistics, did you undertake a Bonferroni or other kind of multiple testing correction?
Yes. This was done after the microarray. This was the Bonferroni statistics and the t-test. And from this, we selected after this the grading concerning, so in mild and severe grading. And this comparison was done with ANOVA.
Terrific. Thank you.
It's nice. Did you check if in the severe form there's not less cells that secrete cytokines? So the result is due to less cells?
This is due because we take the same RNA amount for the microarray. So we have exactly the same RNA amount for all samples. The control samples and the mild forms and the severe forms.
Okay, thank you very much, Tanja.